The Curse of Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh's lost legacy. The Curse of Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh's lost legacy. The golden sands of ancient Egypt stretched endlessly under the burning sun. The Nile, the lifeline of the kingdom, shimmered like liquid gold, and in the grand temples of Thebes, priests chanted sacred hymns to the gods. The great pharaohs of old had ruled for centuries, carving their names into the stone of eternity, but in the heart of this mighty empire, a young boy was about to take the throne. A boy whose name would echo through history. His name was Tutankhamun, and he would become the most famous pharaoh of them all. Tutankhamun was born into a kingdom in chaos. His father, Akhenaten, had abandoned the old gods, shutting down their temples and forcing Egypt to worship only one deity, the sun god, Akhenaten. The people rebelled, the priests plotted in the shadows, and the once great empire began to crumble. Then, suddenly, Akhenaten was gone. His name was erased, his city abandoned. The throne passed to a boy no older than 9. Tutankhamun, a child barely old enough to understand power, was now pharaoh. The boy king was crowned in a grand ceremony, the sacred crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt placed upon his small head. The golden crook and flail, symbols of divine power, were placed in his hands. The people cheered, but behind the smiles of the high priests and generals, there were whispers of control. Tutankhamun was pharaoh in name, but the true rulers of Egypt were his advisors. I, the cunning Grand Vizier, and Horemheb, the ruthless general, Thainbod. They knew the boy was young, easy to manipulate. They used his rule to restore the old gods, rebuild the temples, and erase all traces of his father's rebellion. For a brief time, Egypt knew peace once more. The temples of Amun rose again, the priests regained their power, and the people believed that the gods had returned to favor Egypt. But Tutankhamun was not just a puppet. As he grew older, he began to make his own choices. He trained as a warrior, riding chariots through the sands, learning to fight with bow and spear. He dreamed of becoming a great pharaoh, like Ramses before him. But fate had other plans. One night, the palace was filled with whispers. Tutankhamun had fallen gravely ill. Some said it was a simple infection. Others believed he had broken his leg in a chariot accident, and the wound had festered. But in the shadows of the temple halls, some whispered of betrayal, of poison. Within days, Tutankhamun was dead. He was no more than 18 years old. The kingdom fell into mourning. The great halls of the palace were filled with wailing, and the royal embalmers worked quickly to prepare the boy king for his journey to the afterlife. His golden death mask was placed over his face, and his body was sealed inside a magnificent tomb deep within the Valley of the Kings. But something was wrong. Tutankhamun's burial was rushed. His tomb was smaller than a king's should be, and traces of paint were still wet when the final stone was placed. The walls of his tomb told no great victories, no grand conquests, only a quiet, lonely farewell. Then, as if the gods themselves willed it, his name was erased. His successors, Ai and Horemheb, ensured that his name would never be spoken again. They removed his cartouches, replaced his monuments, and took the throne for themselves. For thousands of years, Tutankhamun was forgotten. But history has a way of remembering the lost. The sands of Egypt shift once more. The Valley of the Kings, long thought to be emptied of its treasures, holds one final secret. For years, archaeologist Howard Carter had searched for Tutankhamun's lost tomb. Many believed it did not exist, but then, on a cold November morning, a young water boy stumbled upon a hidden step, buried beneath centuries of sand. Carter and his team dug feverishly, their hands trembling with anticipation. Then, after days of careful excavation, they found it, a sealed doorway, untouched for over 3,000 years. Carter held a candle to a small hole in the stone and peered inside. What he saw would change history forever. A room filled with treasures. Golden chariots, statues of gods, weapons, and jewelry. And in the center, a golden sarcophagus. Inside lay Tutankhamun, his body still wrapped in sacred linens, his face covered by a mask of solid gold. The world was stunned. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb became the greatest archaeological find in history. His name, once erased, became immortal. The treasures of his tomb traveled the world, his story was told across generations. But with his discovery came a chilling legend. One by one, those who had entered the tomb began to die under mysterious circumstances. Lord Carnarvon, Carter's patron, was bitten by a mosquito, the wound became infected, and he died suddenly. Others in the excavation team met strange and untimely fates. People began to whisper of the pharaoh's curse, a warning to those who disturbed the king's rest. But was it truly a curse, or just coincidence? No one knows for sure. What is certain is this: Tutankhamun, the forgotten pharaoh, had risen again. He had defied time itself, proving that no king, no matter how young or short his reign, could ever truly be erased from history. And though his tomb is now empty, his golden mask still stares out from eternity, whispering the story of a boy who became a god, a king who was lost, and a name that death could not silence.